You know, it's always a great honor to be alive on a Friday because basically that says you have an opportunity to look back and redefine how your next following week will be. Welcome to Friday with Mr. B, where we challenge ourselves to be at the very center of development. Well, as we all know, the United Nations Environment Assembly is happening here in Kenya, bringing together international stakeholders, courtesy of the United Nations. And the main subject is really the environment. What's the future in the different countries, and what are the tangible things that we can begin to engage with? Today we are greatly honored to have His Excellency Anote Tong from a country many perhaps wouldn't even know, but it's called Kiribati. In Kiswahili you would call it Kiribati, but it's actually pronounced as Kiribati. Your Excellency, welcome to WTV.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our story from a different part of the world.
Absolutely. And then of course, as always, Mr. B is here.
Indeed.
A gentleman who is personally concerned and committed to making a change, even as we are talking about climate change and its impact. But let's understand, Kiribati, an island nation situated in the Pacific Ocean. Tell us more a bit about Kiribati and the challenges there.
Okay. Well, we're a group of very small atoll islands, on average around 2 meters above sea level. So atoll islands are very low lying, so we don't have hills like you do. We don't have mountains, we don't have rivers. And so this is a feature of our geography which makes us very vulnerable in terms of whether storm surges, whatever, and certainly to the impacts of what is happening with climate change. We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We are the only country that straddles the four corners of the world because we're in the northern hemisphere, or we're in the southern hemisphere, and we're also on the east and the west of the international dateline. So we're a huge ocean state, constituting something like 3.5 million square kilometers of ocean. Of that, only 804 square kilometers is land. So there we are, a nation of water.
A nation of water, my goodness. Mr. B, I mean, you have, this is not the first time you've been to Solomon's Islands, and definitely you've interacted with all these islands. From a Kenyan perspective, because most of us really, the closest we've been to is the ocean, Indian Ocean. From your perspective, perhaps paint it from a Kenyan perspective so that we understand.
Yes, these islands, first when you are starting from here, you will fly, say from here to Dubai 5 hours. Then from there to the eastern side of Australia, and that is almost 20 hours. And from there you are flying another 20 to 8 hours to get either to Solomon Islands, 5 hours, and then you continue to his islands. So it's a long journey. And I remember when we were in the plane, I stayed there in the plane and I forgot where I was, and it was like in a whirlwind, and so it's far. That's what I can say from Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is far indeed. Of course, right now, to bring the subject home of climate change, for us, when we're talking about climate change, it's perhaps heat here and there, and we can definitely bear. But in Kiribati, it's a totally different story.
Well, it's not just about global warming. I think perhaps, as I said before, our islands are very low in elevation, and so we're very vulnerable to any change in the weather pattern. If we get the storms, the waves come over the islands. if we get serious storms, which we don't, but have begun to have the serious storms. And so it's the threat of the storms and the sea level rise that are perhaps the biggest threat to our survival. But I think more importantly is, given the scenarios of the predictions given by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which predict a rise in sea level within the century of maybe a meter. Okay, a meter. By the time we get a meter, most of our island is underwater. But I think we've got to understand that the water does not stay still. It's moving all the time, and you get storm surges. And so what we are experiencing, even with this marginal rise in sea level, I don't know what it is, but I think what we are finding is there's more energy in the storms today than there used to be, as far as we're concerned. For example, at the beginning of last year, we experienced the edges of a cyclone for the first time in history. We don't get cyclones, we don't get hurricanes. And so that damaged our southern islands, and people's homes were damaged. The source of water supply was contaminated, and now they're still rebuilding, trying to recover. The water lens from which we get our water for drinking is no longer possible to supply to people. So this is happening on and off, but it's becoming more frequent. In some islands we're getting severe inundation, erosion. Some have had to leave their villages, they've had to relocate on the same island, but and I've visited a lot of communities, and there is damage to food crops because the seawater has gone into the freshwater pond, and it's killed all the food crops, damaging the waterlands. And so this is happening gradually, but I think a lot faster than it used to happen.
And how have the people taken that and handled the situation?
Well, our people tend to take things as they come. I think normally traditional societies do that, not realizing that there is this scientific evaluation that's been done, giving them a very bleak future. They don't understand that, nor do they believe it if they are told. Okay, and that is, I think, the saddest part. Because usually we think in terms of tomorrow and maybe the next day, but not 20, 30, 50 years time from now. And so it's important that those of us who have the capability to understand this, take the leadership and do the right thing in order to ensure that our future generations, that we're able to do something, to ensure that they survive in the future.
Sure.
It's not about the generations of today. It's not about you and I, but it's about our children. It's about our grandchildren. The question will be, will they have a home in 20, 30 years' time? And the answer, I believe, is it's going to be very difficult, not without very, very significant and very, very substantial adaptation. And such adaptation will require huge resources. And this is the advocacy and the campaign that I've been on for the last more than 10 years, advocating to the international community that we cannot do this alone. They've got to be a part of the process. They've got to be a part of the solution, because maybe they were part of the problem.
Mr. B, you also have had this desire to make a change, and not just this generation, but for the generations to come. And when we're talking about global warming and climate change, there was talk on how we can safeguard the livelihoods of polar bears, and you're thinking they're human beings. How do you reconcile all that so that we change the way we think?
Yes, first, thank you very much. I'm also really delighted that somebody of your caliber, who has been president 3 terms, I understand, and you have taken something that people feel now and that they see it happen, because normally when president retire, they have all these benefits they enjoy and they don't seem to engage with the day-to-day happening. So that is very moving for me. And myself, I can say I'm very privileged that I was born in a place that environment was so rich because it was we were next to a forest, and I couldn't forget the beauty of that forest and the way we used to take our cattle inside and find a small island of grass, and there the amount of oxygen you get is like you are in an oxygen tent, and invigorated, you feel great. And then this water, those rivers coming from the forest, you can sit there and keep on drinking and drinking because you feel is something special and tasting good. And then I start to see some of those forests starting to go. People are cutting firewood, splitting timber, and when I remember now as an older person, I said, no, we have to do something. And you know, my normal work is to run a media house, but I have started spending more time on environment, telling people that this environment, like one of our advert I'm sure Mr. Tong has seen, is that the nature is complaining that I have given you everything. I have given you livelihood, I have given you shade, I have protected you from the rays of the sun, I have done everything, but you have done nothing or very little. And then now it is my time to hit back. That's environment complaining. And I say to myself, it is better to do something, even a small action, like planting a tree for birthday. And together, the power of numbers or powers of many, we can change. And I'm one of those people who believe that together, now like when we have met, together those people who believe that, they cannot underestimate their power to change things also. Together
they can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We want to take a short break, but when we come back, we want to now look at the tangible action points that Kiribati, they have an anthem that says stand up. So how are they standing up to this enemy, to this threat? And of course Mr. Bidan also says, you know what, yes, actually this nature we have is actually a living asset upon which all other assets are actually established. When we come back, think action. What can you and I do starting today? Keep it Friday with Mr. B. We'll be right back. Now somebody said it is when the last river dries up and the last tree is cut that you will know you cannot eat money. Clearly saying we need to really take care of our environment. It's not just about money, and not just take care of the environment for ourselves, but for future generations. And today we're honored to have a former president, retired president of Kiribati, His Excellency Anote Tong. Your anthem, national anthem, says stand up, Kiribati. How is Kiribati standing up to this threat?
Well, first of all, I find it so interesting that you even know our national anthem, but it's a kind of trying to empower the people to do something. And the question that you ask is, what can you do against what is happening? Okay, and let me share my experience. What went through my mind as a leader, trying to cope and deal with what was happening. Because as I said before, not all of our people understand the full extent of what is unfolding and before them. And so I began to dream up crazy ideas, okay? Because given the scenario that was being put forward by the IPCC, there is no doubt that our islands will be underwater. And we cannot continue to swim for the rest of our lives. So we have two options. Either we build our islands, we find somewhere to live on in the same area, or we relocate. And so we've had to go through that painful process of making a decision about our future. And there's nothing more painful for a leader than tend to admit that maybe we have to leave our islands. But we have to accept the brutal reality of what is unfolding. And so at the end of it all, we made a commitment that we could not allow our country, our nation, to disappear from the face of this earth. So we made a commitment that whatever happens, we must continue to ensure that the nation of Kiribati continues to exist by whatever form. And so we are undertaking programs to build up some of the islands. The question that, again, the next question that would be asked is, can you do it to all of the islands? And the answer is no. I don't see the possibility of the international community coming forward with the kind of resources required to do that. I don't see it happening because it'd be into trillions of dollars. And so we have to accept the reality that some of our people will have to be relocated.
What I'm thinking is that you mentioned a very important thing, that there are areas of, for instance, survival skills, and beyond survival is where you have very high proficient. And take like now in area of fisheries, I believe there are people who have really lived, they understand fish, science and so forth. And for instance, I have 66 acres at the coast, at the Indian Ocean. It's like to say, those people who have that skill, can they come and they work there, they stay there, and they produce so that they can have resources beyond what they need today. And maybe, to me, those are type of solutions that you have to start with the simple ones. I think when we make an appeal, and this is the point I know you are looking at, is to have not a theoretical or a generalized solution, is to say those people who are experts in certain areas, can they engage? And I'm saying, for instance, my farm at the Indian Ocean, yes, I would like some people who can show me how we can make that place in terms of fish, because food security, prawns, what. So if you get number of people saying, yeah, we can engage them first as experts, so that they get familiar with other countries, and they become more internationalized instead of being island people. So I'm sure those are areas of expertise that many countries could look at. Yeah.
Because Your Excellency, what I'm getting here is we might need to explore some investment opportunities, partnership opportunities, so that yes, it's a dire need, but is there a way other countries, even Kenya for instance, can we say what are the areas, entry points of strategic partnerships with Kiribati? Perhaps something is coming to your mind, just 1, 2, 3 pointers you think, you know what, this one, Kenya, you can pick up. And we have investors as well who really want to engage with the country.
Well, let me say that, and I've said this before in the talks that I've given, that we have one of the largest fishery resources in the world. In our part of the world, that part of the Pacific Ocean, of which our exclusive economic zone is a large part, hosts 60% of the remaining tuna resources in the world. 60%.
Wow.
And they remain very healthy. And so there's a lot of fish. It's being taken out. We get maybe 10% of it. And so what we need to do is to find a way to increase our rate of return.
Wow. Perhaps you could also mention a bit about the Phoenix Islands protected area.
Well, the Phoenix Islands protected area was something that I initiated in my term. It's an ambitious idea. It was quite unprecedented in our part of the world. When I started doing it, it met a lot of opposition because a lot of fishing partners. We have a lot of countries, distant water fishing nations, fishing in our waters, and they resisted the idea and they pushed. But why I did that was for a number of reasons. One was for conservation purposes. There were certain species of tuna species of fish that were getting slightly overfished. So we need to put into place some conservation measures. The second was, it was to be a contribution to the biodiversity commitment that we all had undertaken. So that represents 10% of our exclusive economic zone. The third component was, it was a challenge and a statement to the international community that we needed everybody to make a sacrifice and a commitment. And so this was our contribution to humanity. This was our commitment. And if we can do it as a small nation, why cannot anybody else do it?
Excellent. Perhaps as we come to the final bit of the interview, Mr. B, your final words in terms of just moving forward with the idea of let's do something that will impact not only this generation, but the generations to come.
Yes. I think I have floated an idea that we must plant a tree for our birthday. It's not just enjoying a cake.
That's right.
And your blood sugar might go up. Just to plant one tree, it means we will plant 44 million every year in Kenya. It means the whole world will plant 7 billion plus trees every year. And if we do that every year, you certainly find there is a change. But the action itself, there is always something that drags action. And that what drags that is that you just become complacent and imagine that nothing will happen. Yet, if you open your eyes, you find that the rain is not coming the time we expected. And when it comes the time we don't expect, we don't go to our farms to do anything. Because it has come the time you don't expect. Instead of saying, let me still plant and see what happens. So I would like to call every Kenyan and every member of the human race to stop being complacent. The climate change is real. And this, if we go on ignoring, you find nature doesn't seem to care. The fact you are ignoring. The countries that had refused to sign Kyoto Protocol, like United States, they were woken up by serious issues of climate change. Houston, you saw the water getting to where people are, and they have been, there has been cyclones that are so huge, they pull the whole house. And if you go and look at that area, there is not a single tree. miles and miles and miles, because they used to farm wheat, so they didn't want trees. But simple things like that, even themselves, even they are able to go to the moon and going beyond. But like my His Excellency has said, we need to focus on simple things that are happening next to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Your Excellency, your final word to both Kenyans and humanity on what we can do today to safeguard the interests of the coming generations.
Well, I just want to emphasize the point that Mr. B has said, that we cannot continue to abuse nature, because it's not as infinite as we all thought it was. And I think we've been given a lot of lessons on that. Much of the fishery in Canada, much of the fishery in the North Sea has all gone. And I think we don't want to make the same mistake. But there is no doubt in my mind. At the time they were doing this, they were exploiting the fish resources. They thought it was infinite. And so we must not make the same mistake in our part of the world. Here in Kenya, you don't want to make the same mistake that because you have millions of trees, you think it's limitless. You have to keep replenishing it, as we do. And so, yes, we have to look after nature, because nature will look after us if we do look after it.
Powerful way to start. If you look after nature, nature will look after you. And we have a responsibility. And we need to ask ourselves, am I ready to do something today that I can look at my grandchildren face to face and say, I did it because of you, and because I was thinking of you all along. A great challenge indeed. Remember, Friday with Mr. B is always here to challenge us to be at the very center of development. Great honor indeed, Your Excellency.
Thank you for having me.
Our regards to the people of Kiribati.
Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. We want
Thank
to
you
really
so
work
much.
together,
Yes.
stand
Yeah.
up together.
Yeah.
So let's meet next time here on WTV, your Biashara channel. Keep it Friday with Mr. B.